want to know how you see the world. Do you seek out urban beauty? Or do you create your own landscapes? Maybe it's outdoor adventure that makes your world turn. Let us bring your passion into focus and give you the best view yet. At Botwin Eye Group and Oculus Optical, we defy the norms by combining advanced medical eye care with Santa Fe's finest selection of luxury and artful eyeglasses. Botwin Eye Group and Oculus Optical, 2 locations in Santa Fe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Santa Fe Gloom podcast. Got another really great guest today in Eli Fresquez.
We go way back.
So disclaimer, we are related and we are brothers. So Eli, thanks for taking the time to jump on and talk to our Santa Fe Gloom audience.
Wonderful. It's an honor. Thank you, David.
Yeah. I noticed for our viewers, I noticed that Bronco in the back, the Bronco head. And then you also pointed out you got some bunnies in there. So you got a zoo going on. We do.
We have 2 bunnies in the house. They're pretty territorial. So they're the bosses in this floor, on the second floor.
Yeah, and as our listeners know too, I've got Biscuit roaming around. So we've made a commitment that every bark will donate $5 to an animal shelter. So right now he's sleeping. I don't even know where he's at. I don't want to tempt him, but he's here. And special thanks to our sponsors. I'll mention you all maybe towards the end. And special thanks to Pantry Dose. Had breakfast with Michael this morning. So thank you so very much for all the support, sponsors. So Eli, talk us through, before we kind of get into what you do for the community, talk us through your first soccer memories, because you were a soccer player at Capitol High School.
Yeah, so I think like David, soccer is first memories, really. I think I started playing soccer when I was probably about 4 in kindergarten, 4 or 5. And I think it was just something where my parents saw some kids playing soccer in the park and they signed me up. And no one expected me to continue to play soccer, my entire life, really. And my dad was the coach for most of the teams I was on, at least for the first 5 or 6 years of my soccer experience. And what's interesting about soccer is that if you start really young, you'll learn some technical skills that you'll stand out in high school. Like if you just kind of get those, like how to pass a ball, how to dribble, how to juggle, you will stand out as a kid. So start kind of young, do drills. I know sometimes they're not as fun because I always just like scrimmage, but they make a big difference. And so when I got into junior high and high school, because I had like the software, I didn't necessarily have the hardware. Like I wasn't the fastest kid or the strongest kid, but I had the software because I'd been playing all the time. You could be a standout player because of that. So point is you start young, you will definitely learn those skills and it will pay off as you get into high school and junior high and at other levels.
And your reflections on watching the Santa Fe Gloom.
Yeah, amazing. So I know, David had this dream, to do soccer in Santa Fe and indoor soccer. And it was really amazing just seeing the community come together. I have 2 kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. And, unlike when David and I grew up, we were outside a lot, but now everything is on the devices. So getting kids out there, getting our young men out there, playing sports with the community, it's really amazing and really important, I think, given that now so many things are done alone in the house with the device, like YouTube and all that, which is great too. Like it's the new world that we live in, that virtual space. And my kids are virtual natives, right? But having them now, having our kids go out, having our community meet each other in person, making those physical connections is really amazing. And I'll say one other thing about soccer, and sports in general. When I was in high school, there was a big debate about, should we emphasize sports or should we emphasize academics, right? It was like this or that. And I really think we should break that down. It's both. I think sports and academics can live together in synergy, because so many amazing things that I've learned academically in school, the being able to do homework, being able to work with others, work in groups, work in teams. It's all things you learn in school. But athletics, just adds to that teamsmanship, the discipline, the camaraderie, the fun, just adds to the high school and junior high experience. So I think sports is just really important to all of that. And it's not a this or that. It's really both. I think they complement each other, if done right.
Yeah, if it wasn't for sports, I'll speak for myself. I would have not made it through high school or college because I had that carrot, right? I was like, if I don't do work, and I won't be able to go outside and play soccer. And that's what got me to CSU Pueblo with soccer and the phrase student athlete, So,
Yeah.
Eli, talk us through after, I would say, you graduated at UNM, poli-sci and economics, right?
Poli-sci, philosophy. I was a nerd, kind of. I love school. I love learning. I still do. So I was a political science, philosophy, and economics major.
Mm-hmm.
And after graduating from UNM, I went to law school in New York. Was always planning on coming back right after law school, but my first job was working at the Department of Homeless Services. I was really wanting to work in the field of social justice. So I was working in some shelters in the Bronx where I met my wife, who was also an attorney. Always planning on moving back, but had 2 kids, lived in Queens, commuted into Manhattan, and had the opportunity to have a full career there before coming back to New Mexico right before the pandemic. So it's great to come back home after experiencing New York City and all the opportunities there and the fun, and the learning in a big city is just amazing. And I recommend for any of the young guys, the young women, the kids out there, if you have the opportunity to travel, to see the world, definitely do it. Take advantage of it, especially when you're young. It's a lot easier, because that made all the difference. When I came back, you could see things in a different light, and it's a real opportunity to travel and just see the world.
And Disability Pride New Mexico, what is it and what made you do it?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity after working for the Homeless Services to work for the New York State Division of Human Rights, because I really wanted to do civil rights work. That's why I went to law school, was to do social justice and civil rights. And I did a couple of different investigations and some litigation around what we call protected classes. So this is like minority status, religion, things like that. And came across a couple of cases that had to deal with disability. And there was a gentleman there, his name was John. He was the director of disability rights at the state. And he really took me under his wing, and he talked to me about the importance of civil rights work, particularly disability work. And I loved it. So it was something that I learned when I was at New York State Division of Human Rights, but then took with me. I ended up working at the mayor's office for people with disabilities. I worked had kind of an unusual job at New York State Office of Emergency Management, doing emergency management work around vulnerable communities and people with disabilities. So when I came back to New Mexico, I really wanted to do some work around disability rights and advocacy. And I was planning on doing some community events, but then the pandemic happened and I had different things going around in my career. But last year in 2023, I had the opportunity to put together a awards dinner and a banquet around acknowledging our community members, organizations, and individuals who have done things in the disability community, whether it's hiring people with disabilities or having public accommodations. Their places that are open to the public that are accessible. And it really resonated with the community. So the mayor was there, we had city council, we had some state representatives there with these award ceremonies. And so from there, really thinking about how could we expand that. And that's when we created a non-for-profit called Disability Pride New Mexico. And we got our 501c13 status relatively recently, this past spring. So we were kind of sprinting towards what's called Disability Pride Month. Disability Pride Month is similar to what you think of Pride Month with LGBTQ community, except it's more for people with disabilities. Of course, it's intersectional, so it includes members of the LGBTQ plus community, but it's more for people with disabilities. So, and it commemorates the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was in July of 1990. So every July we have Disability Pride Month. And so for this month, we had our awards banquet, similar to last year. It was really great. We had lots of really positive feedback where we, again, gave acknowledgments out to our community. But we also said, well, what else can we do? Well, in New York, we had Disability Pride Parade. And other states and cities also have pride parades, which are really about advocacy, awareness, educating the public, and just having a good time. For many people with disabilities, it's important to get out and to share their experiences and to network and communicate and have fun. So we decided to have a parade here in Santa Fe. It was pretty challenging. If you put together something with the city, there's a lot of things you have to do, forms you have to fill out, security, payments, porta potties, all of that. But we were able to do it. And so we had the state's first ever Disability Pride Parade on July 13th, a couple weeks ago. I was hoping for about 200 people or so to show up, but we had over 300 people actually march in the parade. And then we had a ceremony by the mayor. So we're very thankful for the mayor for his promotion and support for the ceremony, where they read off a proclamation for the city for Disability Pride Month, and also raised a Disability Pride flag over City Hall. The Pride flag is somewhat similar to the traditional June Pride, LGBTQ Pride flag, except slightly different. So raised that, had the ceremony, and then we had, which I would describe kind of like a festival downtown. We had some hoop dancers from our local pueblos. We had mariachis. We had some other entertainment, and then we had community tabling. Community tabling for all of the community and families, but in particular for people with disabilities. So sort of had a resource fair, a festival, and a parade all in one. And it was a real success. We had really great write-ups in the press, the Santa Fe Reporter, the Santa Fe New Mexican, and we hope to just build on that for next year. We have a list of ideas on how to improve the parade, make it fun, make it a little bit louder, festive. So yeah, the first Disability Pride Parade was run through our non-for-profit Disability Pride New Mexico and was a big success. And now we have a little pressure for next year to make it even better.
Yeah, I walked in it with Tyler, had the Gloom flag. So it was great. You know, I showed up and I really didn't know what to expect. And there was a huge crowd there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we didn't either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, it's the first time.
Yeah.
So you're breaking ground.
Yeah. And we had we had everything in the sense that we had service ponies, which were my favorite because I could hang out with these little ponies that are meant to be soothing and really helpful with some folks with certain kinds of disabilities. But for me, it was just fun to have march alongside some ponies.
You can add the ponies to your list at the house. So when we speak on disabilities, what does that mean? What types of disabilities are there, and invisible disabilities? And then I'll have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah, so this is a good question because there are many different definitions of disability. The primary one is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that's a mental, physical impairment that has a substantial limitations on any kinds of life activities. And that definition, though, is not all that inclusive in a sense. There are many other definitions, whether it's Social Security or Federal Rehabilitation Act. But really what it gets to is that it covers things like what you would traditionally think is a disability, like people who use wheelchairs, walkers, and canes, people who are blind, low vision, or deaf or hard of hearing. But it also includes mental health issues. We call these hidden disabilities. And so I think it's really important. It was one of our themes for Disability Pride, was to acknowledge that many people have hidden disabilities. And these could be disabilities that are created whether through developmental development or they come from trauma, whether it's brain injury or other kinds of trauma or just mental health disorders. And these are things that are covered under the American Disabilities Act. And I think it's just really important for people to understand that many people with disabilities you may not see or even know. They're not necessarily people in wheelchairs. So it's an opportunity to share that. And I think given that we have behavioral health crises throughout the state, throughout the country, there are some tools that the ADA can provide, whether you're in school or at work, to use the law in a way that helps make you a better employee, a better coworker, could make people in school have the ability to really utilize the school systems through the American Disabilities Act or something called IDEA, which is a kind of an analog to the ADA, but applied to school systems. So the definition is pretty broad in a sense, but it really kind of depends on who is the one making that definition. And just to emphasize one last time is that many disabilities are hidden. And so it does impact people with behavior and mental health issues.
When I was at the awards ceremony, and I don't know how to explain this, but a lot of people were saying that disabilities really shouldn't be called disabilities. It should be called something else. Can you elaborate on that? Because so many of those individuals who were quote unquote disabled, they're movers and shakers in our community.
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic. It can be a little controversial because there's a lot of how people self-identify and identify themselves. I would say that by and large, most people in the disability community are okay with the term disability. But it really depends. There's been other terms that have been used like special needs or an older term is handicap. And that one has largely been seen as being negative and out of touch. Mm-hmm. So words like handicap, but the term disability itself actually, for most people in the disability community, is the appropriate term. But it really kind of depends. And some people like other kinds of ways of describing who they are.
And mental health and sports. I know this may not be like your expertise, but kind of talk us through that and how, just the accessibility to sporting events or even websites, even what we're doing right now on a podcast. How do you see that unfolding in the future and advocating for people?
Yeah, well, I think making sports more accessible, just big picture, is a way of increasing the number of athletes you can have, but also the number of consumers and customers. So for example, this is take the physical accessibility of a stadium. Like there are the ADA standards for accessible design. So there are actual standards out there on how to make seating accessible, making sure that you have ramps and elevators. There's a lot of actual litigation around line of sight, meaning that people who have special accommodating seating must also be able to have equal access to the line of sight for the field. So there's lots of opportunity around universal design to improve the quality of the spectator experience. And when you help people with disabilities, almost all the time, you're actually helping the general public. So when you make a good arena, a good sport viewing experience for people with disabilities, it usually means you're going to make a good sporting experience for everyone. Then you want to look at inclusive programming. So if you can have programs that meet people where they are, in a sense, so people who are disabled but want to share the experience of playing soccer, there's lots of really innovative programs out there around blind, low vision soccer, using audio sensors as ways of accommodating folks. Now, are they going to be on the pitch playing soccer with people who are more able-bodied? No, not necessarily. But what it does mean is that they get to enjoy soccer and they get to be customers of soccer, right? And so it just expands the network of fans. Captioning is another big one. So making sure that we provide captioning in any kind of video formats, transcripts available. And these are all new technologies that are coming out. So, for example, David, you could put a transcript for this podcast, and who would that be helpful for? Well, that would be helpful for many people with disabilities, in particular people who are deaf or hard of hearing. So having it captioned and transcripted will allow them to enjoy it. But it goes even beyond that, because many people with developmental disabilities like to have transcripts as well, because it gives them both an audio format, a visual format, and a written format for them to follow along. So it just makes it more accessible for everyone. And then on the piece of sports psychology, I think there's a lot of accommodations that could be made for folks in order to participate more in sports in general, and in particular with soccer. And so, again, I think there's some of the tools that the Americans with Disabilities Act and what a reasonable accommodation is under the law that can just increase the consumer base and then allow for more athletes to enjoy sports.
And the future of the Disability Pride New Mexico next year, what's your vision for the parade, the awards ceremony? How are you going to do it? I guess it's the third year, right?
Yeah, so this will be our third year of the concept, our second year as a non-for-profit.
Okay.
And so we're going to plan for another awards ceremony here in Santa Fe, and also a pride parade in Santa Fe. So that's really exciting. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But we're going to be planning some other events along the way, some fundraising events, some networking events, and then also there's Disability Employment Month in October. Employment's really important for everyone. It often connects people with healthcare, it connects people with education, transportation, if you have a job. So we're excited about these events in between as we lead up to Disability Pride Month. But that's here in Santa Fe. And so we've already been talking with some folks in Albuquerque, Las Cruces, and Espanola about doing some events statewide. So we're really excited to bring this kind of festival, whatever we can do, but it really caught on here in Santa Fe. And we've already heard from Albuquerque, well, why aren't we doing this? And I was like, well, okay, well, let's go for it. And we can help you do it because we've already done it, right? So been talking with the city of Albuquerque. We have a contact at Las Cruces, and Espanola has already expressed interest with they're hinting on lowriders in a parade, which might be a first in the country, which would be fairly fun.
Surprised you didn't have lowriders in Santa Fe.
Next year.
Yeah. Great, Eli. Thanks. What else do you got? You've rambled through this perfectly. There's so much information, that like you wouldn't expect from like a Santa Fe Gloom podcast. It's community based. And we need to always recognize, organizations like yourself to be a part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really about collaborating together, and collectively we're bigger if we all come together, right?
Yeah.
So it's, the work I do now in consulting and civil rights around disability can only, help Gloom and help our community. And that's really where we see it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity connecting with sports, adaptive sports here in Santa Fe. They were actually at our award ceremony last year. They weren't able to attend this, but working with that community because it's really about creating relationships at the end of the day. And so that's why it's really great to have Gloom around. And Fuego's been amazing, by the way. They've been very supportive. Yvonne here locally has been working with us, and they are a sponsor. We had about a dozen sponsors this year just for the parade and the banquet. So without the community, we wouldn't have been able to do it. It's just without David, the Gloom, and other folks helping to support our cause, it wouldn't have happened. And so we hope that kind of same community mobilization will also happen in other jurisdictions, other cities. And so far, so good. It's really resonated with people.
Is that the flag in the background too? The disability flag?
No, that's Pink Floyd.
Oh,
the side of the moon.
Looks close, right?
Yeah.
It's real close. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you explain the Disability Pride flag and the colors?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but they represent different kinds of of disabilities, which is really cool. The original flag actually was very bright and was lots of people in the disability community thought it was too aggressive. And for some people, it was triggering. So they've actually modified the flag to make it more, so behind like a grayish background to make it less aggressive. But the different colors actually represent different aspects of disability, whether it's physical disability, a sensory disability, or cognitive disabilities. Those are all represented by the different colors in the flag.
Is that the flag, Eli?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, that's one version of it.
Uh-huh.
There's a newer version of the flag. Let me see if I can find it.
Is it a lighter color?
Yes.
Yeah. I think this looks similar to it. Pull it up.
Yeah, so it says here, blue represents emotional and psychiatric disabilities. White stands for non-apparent or undiagnosed disabilities. Gold is for neurodivergence, like autism, and red represents physical disabilities.
Is that it?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's lighter. It's a lighter color. So that was the flag that was flown over, or that was hung up at City Hall.
That's right. Yeah. So again, the mayor, the ADA coordinator, city council, they read the proclamation and put the flag over City Hall, which was the first, as far as I know, the first in the state to do so. After that, the state of New Mexico, so first city, and then after that, the state of New Mexico also raised a disability flag later.
Yeah, make sure you get me a flag, and
one.
our Gloom players can walk out with it.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah,
because we go from our community tunnel with our fans, with the kiddos, usually sponsors, and we'll have the Gloom players have that flag out for the games.
Cool. Yeah, I have a bunch. I've acquired them. Because
Yeah.
I'll lend them, they'll raise it, and then I won't see it, then they'll bring it back. So I ended up buying a couple.
What else, Eli? This has been great. Thank you so much. I learned so much every time I go to one of your events. And again, it's the first time ever that you've had, or that our city or state has a disability pride event. So thanks for bringing the trailblazer and innovative and that entrepreneur mind to bring it to our state.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess one other thing that we plan on doing is working more on the activist side of things. So looking at policy initiatives and legislation in the state, working with lawmakers to make the state more accessible and accommodating to everyone. When we talk about disability, we were kind of hinting at that, and how do we even describe it? Disability is really a social construction. It's something that society has in some ways created. I mean, yes, you have people who, because they exist in a world that's been created for people who are able-bodied, it's very challenging to maneuver, and that's very real. But many kinds of disabilities, people may not consider themselves to have that disability. So, for example, as people get older, they may have hearing loss, but they don't consider themselves disabled. So, in many ways, it's very subjective and based on our societal norms on what a disability is. And so because of that, I really see that it's a tool to invest in social services, in better outcomes. It's an investment in getting older. As you get older, you're going to get disabilities. Like, there's a higher chance, right, of you getting disabilities. It's part of life. Every family has people with disabilities. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, I alluded to that, IDEA, that can set up IEPs. I'm sorry, there's a lot of acronyms, but these programs help kids in school get the education they need. And these are federal programs based on disability rights. So there's so many different tools that disability activism on the political side and on the legislative and policy side to really improve systems for families. So that's another arena that we're going to plan to get into more. working with state legislators, with city hall, with city planners on how to improve services for people with disabilities, which the outcome is that it improves services for everyone. I mean, we have terrible sidewalks in Santa Fe because we have an old infrastructure. How do we improve sidewalks? Well, there is actual regulations and best practices out there through the Americans with Disabilities Act on how to improve sidewalks. So there's lots of tools out there in order to make investments in our community.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that with just going down Canyon Road. I mean, myself, I'm able-bodied, and it's really difficult. I couldn't imagine if you're in a wheelchair or a walker to get through that. You can't, right?
Yeah, and a lot of folks say, well, you know, there's a historic preservation, and that's actually not true. I mean, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you're supposed to preserve the historical significance of an area, but also make it accessible. And the two can be symbiotic. You don't have to pick one or the other. You can preserve the cultural and historical significance of any area, but also make it accessible for everyone. And it's really just an investment in infrastructure. And it's better to do it right when they're actually building new infrastructure, as opposed to having to go back and remediate because there's been a lawsuit. So I always say, go ahead and make those investments now, because to go back and have to fix them in the future is going to cost more.
Yeah. Eli, this has been great. Thank you so very much. Let me thank our sponsors, Pantry Dose. Thank you guys so much for the breakfast burrito this morning. City of Santa Fe Economic Development, Age Friendly Senior Care, Pet Press Podcast, Sam's Club, Mercedes-Benz, and Botwin Eye Group. You guys, thank you so very much for helping our community grow, the Santa Fe Gloom, and thank you so very much. Eli, what else do you got? We got a few minutes.
Oh, I mean, with David, what you've done in Gloom, I mean, the games are amazing. If anybody hasn't gone to a game, it's like, you know, it's so fast paced and there's so much energy. And I just love seeing young men, you know, working together, building up leadership, seeing the kids in the crowd, seeing the parents, seeing the sponsors. It's really, it's as much a sporting event as it is a community event. And it's just wonderful to make these kinds of connections. And I just hope that, you know, we continue to build on it. Obviously, it was an extremely successful year, going nearly to the championship. And if it's in Denver again, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold off from not going this time. And it's really also about working with our multiracial communities, multicultural communities, bringing people together around sports. When you look at the Olympics right now that's going on, and so much conflict in the world, and you have people settling things, you know, on the pitch, and you see the world coming together and united around sports. I think there's something special about sports that can bring people together and solve problems in so many different arenas, even political problems, because it gives people an outlet to kind of release energy, work as teams, have competition, but put that sort of human condition of rivalry among countries, but in a place that's safe and accommodating for everyone. So there's something about sports, I think, that's really important to humans. And I think we're only tapping into it now.
Yeah, I mean, most of our family gatherings is what? It's soccer games, it's Michigan football games, it's Bronco games. You know, I mean, if the Broncos are having not such a good season, maybe we're seeing less of each other sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
If they're winning, it's like, that's hey, what house are we at? You know, mom's going to be always yelling, you know. So I think you make a great point that sports, community events bring us all together. I mean, some of my best memories in life is going with you, Uncle Bob, Aunt Carolyn to the Bronco games.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, those are.
Shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to actually put that on the up here. It was Mike Logan.
Yeah. And he gave David his shoe, and it was like this big in his head.
Yeah. So we were outside a Bronco game, and you were with me.
Yeah.
And I think it was either you or Uncle Bob was picking me up, and I was getting autographs, and it was Mike Lodish who, let's see, he played with the Buffalo. He went to UCLA, played for the Buffalo Bills, I think either 2 or 3 of those Super Bowls that they lost. Then eventually came over to the Broncos and won, I think, 1 or 2 of the Super Bowls. But yeah, he gave me his shoe and his football shoe, and it had grass, it had everything. Then and he signed it and gave it to me. And that was the first Bronco game that I'd ever been to. So I need to actually put that up there.
That was Mile High too, right?
Yeah, that was at Mile High.
Yeah, and I think it was probably the 97 season.
97. It was October 27th against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was Joe Montana who was the quarterback. I'm not sure, but I think it was maybe Marcus Allen was one of the running backs. And then, of course, it was Elway, Terrell Davis, Shannon Sharp.
The team.
I mean, yeah, and I don't know if they won it that year.
That was
the year before. Or they won it the year after that, I think.
Yeah, I think that was the year they lost to
Jacksonville.
Never going to forget that.
That was a bad day.
That was bad.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Eli. Thanks for your time. And we'll have you on again. We'll have you have the kids out for the Gloom game. Tyler and Ella, they're big supporters. Ella's, she had some artwork for the Gloom.
Yeah.
So super exciting.
Wonderful. Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you, David, for everything.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eli.
Okay.